Time for the Voice of Real Estate with Brent Ward at CWTAR, the Central West Tennessee Association of Realtors. I'm getting just about as good at that as Cleve Marsh used to be.
Yeah, you're pretty good at it, Jimmy.
Well, I have to look at the letters still.
You're still looking at it.
But I don't have the full words anymore, so I'm getting better all the time.
That's so disappointing. You're a member. You're a member. You
I
should
know.
just know these things.
I know how to write it on the check.
And you know what? That's really the most important part. As long
Always.
as you can write that check, we're
always
all good on our
the
end
most
over here.
important thing. You know, I heard somebody talking the other day that spring. Well, we know that spring is about 10 days away, and they said spring is the time for people to move. Is that still the case?
Pretty much, that is pretty much always the case.
People get in the mood to move in the spring.
They get in the mood after being, cooped up in the house, and it's all dreary and cold, and then spring hits, and now the sun's shining, and everybody just now's the time to go out there and start moving.
And
Just do it.
even though I'm sure some people, especially the folks in my age group and maybe a little younger than me, still want to get out on that Sunday or Saturday afternoon and drive around and look at the signs and see which one looks the best. But that's not necessarily the way it's done anymore, is it?
Not as much, but there's still a lot of people like drive around and look at houses. My wife being one of those. Love her to death, but she loves to look at houses. And when I was a real estate agent, that was fine. I mean, it was easy to get in and out and drive around and look at houses and everything else. I don't have access like I used to, so now then I have to call and get permission and go in, take a look, this, that, and the other. But we drove past the house yesterday and we left church, so. Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, back when I was appraising and doing more houses than I was doing commercial stuff, when my wife would want to drive around and look at houses, somehow the thrill for me wasn't there.
Well, I'm not going to lie and say that I'm right there with you on that one, because a lot of times I know we've gotten into a couple of arguments a few times about that, because I'll be like, what's wrong with our house? She's like, there's nothing wrong with our house. I just want to go look at that house. And I'm like, okay, all right, I got it.
Why not?
I got it. So
this is episode number 2 in our really new configuration on Monday morning. We now call this the Voice for Real Estate.
That's correct.
And it is sponsored by the Central West Tennessee Association of Realtors, along with Leaders Mortgage Services, Allstate Insurance, Angie Hooten Hughes, and Dubuisson and Associates, National Property Inspectors.
That is right.
And in so doing, we don't necessarily talk directly about real estate every time, but you are bringing in special guests who are in businesses related to real estate.
Yes, our guest this morning, which I haven't introduced yet, so for all those that are out there listening, you have no idea who's sitting here with us, but she brings something to the stage. Not that there's anything wrong with the way Jimmy and I look, but it's always nice to have somebody else up on stage that looks better than we do. But we have with us this morning Miss Christy Futrell, and Christy is with the American Heart Association. So good morning, Christy. How are you this morning?
Good morning.
Good. Glad you're here with us this morning on this somewhat sunshiny day. It's starting to creep out through the clouds.
It's getting that way. Yeah.
It's getting that way. So, and I have Christy here. I'm going to get to Christy in a minute because my topic, real estate related, actually, kind of leads into where we're going to with American Heart Association. So, what I was going to talk about today was like stress in real estate. So I'm sure at some point.
Surely not.
Yes, believe it or not. And it comes in all shapes and sizes, and it affects everybody, real estate agents included. So I'm sure at some point in time in your life, Jimmy, you have bought and sold a house, and I'm sure it was totally stress-free from start to finish, correct?
I know.
Oh, okay. All right.
The first one was because I was too young to know that it shouldn't be.
There you go.
But the rest of them, no.
Well, that's what I was going to talk a little bit about today. I'm not going to get into too very much, but there's a lot of things that happen in real estate, and we talked about it last week when we had Leaders Credit Union Leaders Mortgage Services was here. I'm going to say Credit Union because that's the way I've known them forever.
Yeah, me too.
But Leaders Mortgage Services was here, and we talked about all the different moving pieces and all the people's hands that touch real estate transactions, and there's just going to be stress with that.
Yep.
And there's not a whole lot of way to get around except for try to work your way through it. But I will say, on days like yesterday, and you mentioned spring just a little while ago, having the sunshine and the temperatures just right, that sure does make things go a lot smoother.
Yes, it does.
And that's why a lot of people move in the spring when they're out there, is just for that very reason, because they feel better about it. And I read an article the other day which kind of led into this one, and it was talking about the daylight savings time. Is that what we just went to? Is that right?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. Yeah. So believe it or not, that is actually very stressful for a lot of people. Did you know that?
Yeah. That 1 hour can really upset people's apple cart.
It does. And this morning I realized that, because this morning I woke up and I was not in the cheerful mood that I was like a few days ago, because it's been sunny when I get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
And now this morning we're back to being dark in the morning.
No, I hate that.
I prefer waking up when it's dark, but my mind and everything's gotten used to being daylight when I wake up, and now that it's not, so I woke up this morning, I was just like, I didn't want to get up. I was like, I just want to go back to sleep, and
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I can see how that'd be stressful. So that's just one of the small ways getting into it. But yeah, sunshiny day always helps with that. Christy and I actually, Christy and my wife and her husband and her, we all used to be neighbors like a long time ago, like 20 years ago.
Oh man.
Yeah, we did. When we were all starting out with our first little vinyl houses and a new upstart subdivision, and even though I'm fixing to tell you a story, it doesn't have anything to do with them. She wanted me to make sure that I pointed that out right off the front. So we had a next door neighbor that lived on the other side of Christy and her husband, and I knew him too. I'd known him for a long time. We talk about stress. This is something that comes up after the fact. So we all bought our nice little vinyl houses and lived on a nice street. And I hear a knock at the door, and I go to the door one day, and here's Mike, and Mike's standing at the front door. He's got a paper in his hand he needs me to sign, because apparently I owned my house and his house.
Whoops.
Yeah. So, and it had been that way for almost an entire year. And It wasn't up until he was getting ready to do something, I think maybe going to do some sort of loan or something, maybe to put up a fence or whatever, when they started doing a title search. And we talked about that last week. Title searches, right? Important. Yeah. Apparently it got missed in the title search that when the builder who built all of our houses right through there, somehow or another had his lot and my lot deeded together.
Yeah.
And then when my house sold, which sold first, I got mine and his.
Yeah.
And so they didn't catch it when he sold his house, that his didn't.
Ooh,
it didn't get deeded properly. So I own two houses. I just didn't know it.
Yeah, some attorney was feeling a lot of stress at that time.
Yeah, some attorney was feeling stressed, and I'm sure had he not known me, there would have been a lot of stress walking up to my front door to knock on the front door to ask me to sign some paperwork saying, "Can I please have my house back?" So
wow.
Yeah, interesting, right?
That's spooky.
It is. I have lots of stories when it comes to real estate, but I can't tell them all today. I've got to move forward with all that. So, anyways, the only thing I'm going to tell you as far as buying or selling a home out there before I get to Christy and we get to talking about the American Heart Association is one of the best ways to relieve a lot of your stress is to hire a good realtor to help you with the process.
That's true.
And I'm just going to say that, and I know I've been one, and I work for the Association of Realtors, but I can tell you right now that if you're out there trying to do it on your own, or you're thinking about doing it on your own, you're going to pick up a lot more stress than you normally would, because you're now having to do it all.
Yeah.
And just remind you that the same legal things that we have to do as far as realtors are concerned, you have to do too as a seller of your property. Yep. And I'm not going to go over all those on the air, but there's a lot of stuff you have to be aware of. And the biggest one I want to throw out there, and I've used this in the past with friends of mine who thought about trying to do a for sale by owner, but your house is your home, right? That's where you live.
Yep.
That's where your kids are, your wife is, everybody else, and you're trying to remain safe, correct?
Yeah.
But the minute you get ready to sell your property, guess what? Now all of a sudden, you're just going to let whoever comes up to your front door in the front door, right?
Wrong.
Yeah. Well, and guess what?
But you do, yeah.
What happens if you don't? What if you don't let them in for, you don't like the way they look, you don't
Yeah.
like the car they're driving or whatever? Well, that's a whole other series of stressful events that can
Yes.
follow up behind that one.
Yes, you're going to get
Fair
a letter
housing,
from their attorney. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right. All kinds of stuff. Whereas if you list your property with a real estate agent, we're going to know who's coming through your house because they're going to be pre-approved. They're going to be working with another real estate agent. I mean, all of that stuff is going to be done and out of the way. And then, if you got your house for sale by owner and both of you work, who's going to show the property? And who's going to take up? And what if that person doesn't show up?
Right.
And so I had a good friend of mine who listed theirs for sale by owner, and his wife didn't work, so she was at home. So, he had that covered. And he had two daughters, and she homeschooled. They were going to be at home. And I just politely mentioned, I'm just like, okay, so if some guy pulls up in a truck and he wants to come look at the house, your wife's just supposed to let this strange guy into the house with him and his two daughters. I didn't get 5 minutes down the road back to my house before his wife was calling me on the phone saying, can you come back and list our house? So I'm just saying, that's just one of the many things I could point out about there.
And it's one of the things that most people wouldn't think about.
They don't. A lot of times, the only thing I can say on that is don't let money completely. I'm getting text on my phone.
Yeah, your Dick Tracy wristwatch.
My Dick Tracy wristwatch, from my listening and watching audience out there that's like, say, don't do that and don't do this and don't forget to mention that. So So yeah, listing your property with a qualified realtor will go a long way to reducing a lot of your stress. So that's about all I'm going to talk about on the stress part of it. Now we're going to bring over American Heart Association. Stress is really bad for your heart, correct?
Extremely bad.
Extremely bad for your heart. And I read an article the other day that like 85%, I had it on my phone, but like 85% of all illnesses are somewhat stress related, like all of them. Now I know that's probably not in your American Heart handbook there, but I know there's a lot in that handbook. I've seen her handbook. I know what it looks like. So it's a big book, but
it stresses me out.
Yeah. See, there you go, right there. And she works there. Okay, so another reason why I have Christy here at American Heart Association is because CWTAR has partnered with American Heart Association, and they were one of our charities that we sponsored this year. So it's the first time we've partnered with American Heart Association. We've already agreed to do it again next year, right? I haven't given her her paperwork back, so she's completely going on my word that I'm going to follow through with that. But we were happy to be there. I was on. I have a title, but I don't remember what it was. I was basically on their board of directors for the Go Red campaign, and I've apologized immensely. I don't know how many times because I feel like I dropped the ball on my end, but that's okay. You know, I was there. I've supported, so I thought, you know what? I'll bring Christy on a radio show. Maybe that'll help a little bit.
Yes. Great.
And bring her on here, and she's on Facebook Live, and so we're all covered there. So let's talk about the American Heart Association just a little bit. So they are a national organization, correct?
Yeah, we are. We're a national organization that's been around since the 1900s.
Wow. 1900s.
We're really old, but I like to say we're really seasoned.
That's right.
There you go.
So we know what we're doing by now, and it wasn't just a group of people on the street that said, hey, there's a problem. It was a group of doctors that said, we have an epidemic, and we need to do something about it.
All right. So a group of doctors who started the American Heart Association. That starts out on a great note right there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and kind of jump forward a little bit because I know this is something that Christy and I have talked about at least twice that I know of, and I hear this crop up. And when you speak about national companies, and no matter which one it is, American Heart Association just being one of them, most everybody wants to know is how does it affect me locally?
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot here because, like I said, we've had this conversation. So
absolutely, it doesn't matter what national organizations represented in Jackson, Tennessee, or West Tennessee. Whoever works with them is going to answer that question. I've been answering this question for 15 years for 2 different organizations. With the American Heart Association specifically, you know, Brent, I hope you don't have to, but if you go to the doctor for chest pain, or maybe you're having, you know, some weird symptoms, and no matter what it is, you know, hopefully you don't get that diagnosis of heart disease, but if you do, those doctors are working off of what we created.
Oh.
And I don't know how local you can get.
Yeah, right.
That's pretty intimate, you know, because who do you trust? Who do you trust? You trust your doctors. You trust these cardiac clinics and nurses and nurse practitioners and anybody in the cardiac related field. You are relying on them because do you know how to fix you?
No.
I don't know how to fix me if that's a problem. You know, we have to rely on the experts, but they have to have someone providing those answers to them, unless they are a researcher. And I haven't met one in Jackson, Tennessee yet, nor has anyone brought me to meet them.
I was going to say, I don't know if I've met one either.
But unless they are a researcher, they are not coming up with the protocols, the guidelines, the treatments, the new cholesterol medicine, the new blood pressure medicine, but they are giving it to you. You know, they are looking at your symptoms. They're seeing if it's a right fit. So we have to have research. And all day long, I will go back to that first. That is very local. Although you can't feel it, you can't touch it, you can't go out and buy a new laptop and feel that, you know, it's not that same gratification when you invest in research. But that's one of the ways that is so local. And I can go on. I got more.
Yeah, I know you do. I know you do.
How long you want me to talk?
I've heard a lot of those. Now, there's something to do with the machines that are in locations. What do you call those things where you?
Yeah, so, you know, an AED, that's a great example of someone created that to save people's lives. You know, CPR in school kits in all of our Madison County high schools now. You know, I love it when my daughter sees a picture on Snap and one of her friends at Madison High School or somewhere is learning CPR with our kids. I love it. It's like, give that to me. Oh, no, picture's gone, Mom. I hate Snap. You know, I was like, I know those pictures exist somehow. Anyway, the CPR in school kits, you know, the the infant CPR kits that we've donated to the hospital multiple
go.
times
That's
over
what I
the
was
past
looking
couple
for.
years. Is that
Yep.
what you're looking for?
I was looking for. I knew you
The-
you did a lot with the hospital,
Yeah.
and I figured you'd get to that eventually.
Yeah,
so.
the infant CPR kits. We've done that a few times. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think we're over 438 something kits over the last couple years.
Wow.
But that's so mom and dad can learn CPR, and this is something they were buying a long time ago. I mean, they can tell you, Ayers Children's Medical Center, this has been in their budget line item for a long time. They've loved this product forever, but we've just been able to get some grants over the past couple years and work with a sponsor called Delta Dental that were able to help us get those in there and alleviate some of that budget for them. But this is so mom and dad goes home, not only have learned CPR for their infant, but then they can take that kit home and they can refresh themselves, when they get home. The DVD, the little blow up Annie.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a great
So
gift.
that's basically a start to a how-to guide for children, I guess, when you leave the hospital, because they don't come with instructions.
Right. They don't come with instructions. They don't at all. And we sure do need to know how to perform CPR.
Okay. All right. Well, that's right there. We're going to pause you right there real quick, and we're going to turn it over to Mr. Jimmy here for a second.
Yeah, just a second or two. We need to let everybody know who is making this available to them. Christy Futrell is with us, the American Heart Association. And this is the voice for real estate. Central West Tennessee Association of Realtors is the host, Brent Ward. And our sponsors, Leaders Mortgage Services over at 36 Stonebridge Boulevard here in Jackson, Tennessee. We're pleased to have them with us on our inaugural show last week. You can reach them at 215-6678. Allstate Insurance Company, Angie Hooten Hughes is the agent there, 250 Carriage House Drive. You can call her at 668-1990. And Dubuisson and Associates, Inc., they are National Property Inspections, and their number is 467-6250. Should you need to get that job taken care of, they can handle that for you also. We appreciate them being among our sponsors here on The Voice for Real Estate every Monday at 10:15, and we'll throw it back to Brent.
All right, we are back again, and we have with us Miss Christy Futrell, who's with the American Heart Association, and we were just talking about how, even though they're national, it comes all the way right back down to where we are, right here in Jackson, Tennessee.
It does.
And right back to our hospital that we have here,
Yeah.
which we have an exceptional hospital here. I don't
Absolutely.
care what a lot of people have to say about it. I believe it's a great hospital.
You're right.
There's a lot of people come
Absolutely.
in and out of there. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if it
And
wasn't,
that's
they
the
wouldn't
key,
be.
that you come out.
That you come out.
And
That's
hey,
what
there's
I
a
was
lot
getting
of
ready to
people
say.
coming out.
There's a lot of people coming out. More coming out than there
right.
were, right? So back to where we were talking about things that they did local, and we were talking
Yeah.
about how children are not born with instruction books, but you're helping with that by sending the
Yeah.
parents home with these infant kits and teaching them how to do CPR on their own children, which,
Absolutely.
believe it or not, it probably happens more often than not.
Yeah.
Where they would need that. So
Yeah.
I think that's great that you guys are doing that.
Yes, absolutely. Another thing we do locally within the hospital is, and they've been doing this for years and years before I ever started at 2013, but they invest annually in a membership to be a part of one of our programs called Get With the Guidelines. And so it's, in layman's terms, basically it's providing all the next steps and what to do and when to do it and all the guidelines and protocols for cardiac care and stroke care. And actually they won an award last
Oh,
summer
there you go.
for the stroke care side of the Get With the Guidelines program. But, that's just one more, that's so cool to me because, all that data they put into that program and all that work, and I've met with those ladies, they are just geniuses, I tell you. Some great people up there, and sitting down with them and just seeing all the data that goes back into that system. Well, then that comes to us, and it's not just that hospital where the Get With the Guidelines program is, but it's all across the country. So all that data coming back into us, going into our research, which then comes back to the hospital through the updated protocols, guidelines, and treatments. So our local hospital is a part of the American Heart Association research every day.
Every day.
Every day. Every day. I think that's so cool.
That is very cool. And now, of course, I'm sure all this research and everything, just like everything else, requires money. You have to. It requires a lot of money, I'm sure. Because I've always heard the most important part of anything, any kind of new drug they come out with, or any kind of anything, new equipment or anything, is always the research part of it. Is always the most expensive part
Yeah.
because you just got to keep going and going until you get it
Yeah.
right. So there's several things you guys do throughout the year, every year
Yes.
that you do. So name some of those things that you guys do.
Yes, and real quick, something that just popped
That's
in my
okay.
mind.
That's fine.
Talking about how research and how these protocols and guidelines coming about, it costs money. So I'm going to talk about how we can fund that
Yep.
locally and how we can help. But I read something recently, from bench to bedside, they don't just come up with an idea and it's ready next month.
Right.
We're talking 17 years is the average, bench to bedside. I mean, it has to go through so many processes, and thank God, right?
Yeah, true.
We don't want to
Yeah.
be experiments, do we?
No.
We don't want to go into
I was just
our
thinking
local
about the
hospital.
testing phase of the experiment.
In our experience.
Yeah.
So bench to bedside, we're talking 17 years sometimes. So yes, this needs funding, and we have 2 local campaigns throughout our year that we work on in the spring. And the one that you've been helping me with is Go Red for Women on March 21st. Get your ticket
Coming in.
now at
Yep.
west10gored.heart.org. You can do that by Friday at close of business, and then ticket sales will be over because I got to order the food. I got to
Right.
order the tablecloths, people. You know,
There you go.
I got to eventually order.
At some point in time,
My
that does
vendors
come
would
up.
appreciate that. So I want to make sure you have a seat there. And then we have the Heart Walk in the fall, and
Okay.
that's a wonderful event. And both events are, just depending on the event, are anywhere from 500 to 800 people. The Heart Walk obviously is a little bit more. We have more room out there at Union University, and then the Carl Perkins Civic Center. We average about 500 to 600
Okay.
each year. It's a great event.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So we'll have a table there this year, and we've got our group ready to go.
Good.
So we're excited about going. So all of these all benefit the same thing, right?
Yes,
They're all going.
so you have the Go Red for Women, which is more awareness on the women's side, because 1 in 3 women are dying, not diagnosed, are dying of heart disease. And also just a little bit on that and why we do more than just the awareness on women things. We also do the Heart Walk, which is about everybody, and both are about stroke and heart. But 48%, this just came out a couple weeks ago, 48% of Americans now have some type of cardiovascular disease.
Whoa.
That's almost half
Almost
our
half.
population.
Yep.
Almost half the population.
And 80% of it's preventable.
Well, I
So
was just
something's
fixing to
wrong.
ask about that. I was going to say, now, don't you have a number that goes along with that about how much of this stuff actually could be preventable?
Yeah. Something's very wrong when we can look at that. Some's genetic. It's always going to be. There's going to be
Sure.
genetics that plays a part. But when 48% is preventable, 48% have it and 80% is preventable, we know that we have a lot of choices to make.
Yep.
Our nutrition, how we're feeling ourselves. Are we smoking? Our tobacco usage and our physical activity. Spring is not just the time to move. We need to move all year long.
I'm sure they get physical activity in the spring when they're moving. I'm
Yes.
just saying.
Yes.
Because we're on Facebook Live, so you can see physical activity. Not a whole lot of that in my everyday routine, but my wife, bless her heart, she tries really, really hard to work on that. Of course, she's all thin and tall and all that
I
stuff.
know. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You got it made, girl.
So
But that goes to say we look at people and we see this exterior.
Yes,
we
I have
don't
learned
know what
that.
cholesterol is. We don't know what that blood pressure is. I have many skinny friends that have dealt with that, and we're all
Yeah.
susceptible to that if we do not fuel our body and eat the right things.
Oh yeah,
and
totally.
move.
My wife's mother, my mother-in-law, she's she's what, probably 70 in that range. And honey, I'm sorry, I don't know your mother's age, but it's close to that. But she's very active. I mean, like jumping on the trampoline and playing with my daughter and all that kind of good stuff. But yes, she has very bad cholesterol problems and very active as much as she does. But it happens. So like you said, the exterior can really hide what's on the inside when you get out there and you get going. So now you talked about 80% of it is preventable, and you talked about changing some of your lifestyle stuff. I know when I came to my very first Go Red for Women meeting, and you had lunch there and everything, and I walked in and I don't know what I was expecting, but what I got was not what I was expecting, and everything was
What are you saying? Did
no,
I
it
have
was
something
good.
bad?
I ate it, but it's
Did I
not
have
like
cookies?
stuff that I normally would not order, right?
Okay, it's healthy.
That's right.
Yeah,
And
Heart
then,
healthy. It's
and
heart
then we
healthy.
had
I hope
the
my boss hears that. Yes,
it
I
was
ordered
very
healthy.
healthy. That's the thing. I was like, oh, okay, well, this is different. And then when we came to the thing we had here at the Old Country Store, what was that? That was the
Yeah, the Feast in the Field. It's a donor recognition event.
and those were all recipes out of the
Yes.
American Heart Association cookbook, correct?
Yes, yes.
And I will have
And
to
our Go
admit,
Red,
and
too.
our Go Red,
Same thing.
and I
Same
will have
food.
to admit that was like one of the best meals I had eaten.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, and I
Yeah.
brought somebody with me.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Also fits into that not a whole lot of physical activity, and he also talked about how good it was. So,
Oh, I'm so
there's some good
glad.
stuff in that recipe book.
Yeah,
it's out
and
there.
actually Old Country Store catered that. So whoop
Yep.
whoop.
Yep.
And
Yep.
they'll be doing our menu at the Go Red.
Yeah, there
and
you go.
they know. They just know now. They go ahead and pull the recipes and they have that ready at the tasting. They're all American Heart Association recipes that you can find at simplecookingwithheart.org. And thousands and
Simplecookingwithheart.org.
thousands of recipes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's great. And yeah, everything doesn't have to be loaded up with fat and all that kind of good
Butter.
stuff, and butter. Gosh, butter's good. That's
Yes,
good.
it
Bacon
is.
grease goes good with it. Okay.
But
anyway.
once you make the change,
Yes, that's the key.
You got to give it a couple of weeks
You
to
do.
get all that other junk out of your system.
Your palate. will
Yeah, and
change.
get used to the other things, and you'll be glad that you did.
I've always heard from one of my old partners that always told me that it takes 21 days to get into a routine that
Yes.
you'll actually
Yeah.
stick to. So if you
Yep.
can do it for 21 days, then it should be, from that point on, it should
Yep.
be something that you'll just do.
Yep.
So, so yeah, if you're listening out there, stop smoking, get some physical activity, change your. It must preaching to the choir here. I don't smoke, but
Hey, we all
you know,
need to preach
No,
to
I
the
don't either.
choir.
but we all
It's
do.
something
Yeah, we all
battle.
do. That's I know.
Even
and
your heart rep.
my
I
wife's
struggle
probably
with
jumping
it all
up
the
and down
time.
right this very minute, going, "I told you, I told you." Oh goodness, yeah.
Tell her we'll talk later.
Yeah, I know. Well, so you're at church on Sunday, right? And just
That's
talk to her in the hallways. All right. So you got this big event coming up, and I know you still got some tables open, got some seats open.
Absolutely.
So tell us about that again.
Yes, so it is Go Red for Women at the Carl Perkins Civic Center on Thursday evening, March 21st. That's next Thursday evening.
Okay.
For all our sponsors, if you're a Circle of Red member or a Red Tie Society member, those are donor societies we have, you are welcome to come from 6 to 6:45-ish. Then we need you to go downstairs for our VIP social hour. And then at 7 o'clock for all of our other individual ticket holders, we'll begin our program. And it's a wonderful night. Our leading sponsors are Leaders Credit Union
Yay for
and
Leaders.
Cigna Healthcare.
Yep.
And we're so excited to have them. But we have so many other sponsors. I think, gosh, we're up to like 40 we're just so blessed. Our community really does see the need to fight back and to come together as a community. We are stronger together. It's a great fashion show at the inn,
Oh,
hosted
okay,
by
fashion show.
Macy's. Macy's here. I love our local Macy's.
Yes,
We
indeed.
love them. And we have a wonderful survivor story that we'll be highlighting. Vanessa Rogers. She's worked at Leaders since she was a baby, I think.
Wow.
And she's been there forever. And she has a great story of, I was lifting weights. I was running 5 miles a day. I was doing all this stuff. And here's my story. This is what happened.
Interesting.
So it'll be a good story.
Awesome. Well, if somebody needed to contact you, what would be the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, just email me. I'm looking at it almost 24 hours a day right now at Christy, CHRISTY .Futrell, FUTRELL @heart.org.
Heart.org. Okay.
Easy enough.
And if you can't find her there, just contact me. You know how to find me. And then also, I just want to first of all thank Christy for coming on the show today.
Thanks.
And I hope everybody that's out there listening will listen to what Christy has to say and think about your heart. I do think about my heart all the time. Just gonna be honest with you, because I've told you that my grandfather had a heart attack, and he died from a heart attack. And at a fairly young age, he was only in his mid 60s, I think, when he passed away, and had just come from a funeral and just had a heart attack and just died right after it. So I do think about it all the time. Doesn't mean I follow it, but I do think about it. But I also want to mention real quick, because I got in trouble last week because I didn't mention it, is that we have our CWTAR college scholarship golf tournament coming up on April the 25th, and I was going to keep talking about it. We'll talk more about it beforehand, but I just wanted to be sure I bring that up. And if you want information, you can just email me, Brent Ward at CWTAR.com, or you can go to our West10homesearch.com, which is our website as well, and get more information on it there. And with that, I think I'm done. Christy, thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. And Jimmy, as always, thank you for being here, because I have no idea how to operate that thing right there.
That makes
And,
3 of us.
You're better at it than I am, I can tell you that.
Hey, it's always fun, always entertaining and informative, and we'll do it again next Monday morning about 10:15. It is The Voice for Real Estate, presentation of Central West Tennessee Association of Realtors, hosted by Brent Ward and sponsored by Leaders Mortgage Services, Allstate Insurance, NG Houghton Hughes, and Dubuisson and Associates National Property Inspections. And the Mid-Morning Mix continues at 10:46.
Collision Specialist. Open